Welcome to the SHT podcast. This podcast is created by our community for our community and for anyone else who wants to look, feel, and perform like a freaking badass. Your holistic health journey starts and continues right here with us. Rediscover how you were meant to live.
All right, what is going on, y'all? Welcome back. We're doing another little week in review. We got some really good feedback on the past few that we've done. I still don't have a co-host yet, but we're working on it. I actually have several people that replied to the request last time, sent me an email. I've got someone in Australia that we're checking out, and then my sister's going to join us, I think, next week, and then Mindy's going to be back on board when she can. So, unfortunately, today you just got to listen to my voice, but I promise this is going to be some really, really useful stuff because, again, it's a bunch of great learning points from the past week. Some of it may be reiterations of things you've heard in the past, which I think for all of us, it's really good to reinforce some of the concepts that we learned together. And so with that, let's get started. The first thing I'd like to cover is upcoming events. Probably too late for this, but we have our pizza afternoon today at Dom DeMarco's, and that is at 3 p.m. here in Las Vegas. And I'm not sure why I'm even covering that because no one's going to get this in time to see it or hear it. So the next thing we have, though, Camping, Backpacking, Outdoors 101 on September 4th at 10 a.m. PST, and that is virtual through Crowdcast. It's going to be awesome. It's the latest and greatest for beginners, for veterans, on camping, on sourcing spots, on equipment, on backpacking, and some lessons that we've learned during our recent backpacking trip. And then finally, we have our farm day at Christensen's Family Farms, which is where we get our meat from the Vegas Food Co-op. 100% grass-fed, grass-finished, pasture-raised pork, like really good quality stuff. That is on September 18th, which is a Saturday, and that's all afternoon. That weekend, we'll be camping Friday and Saturday, so anyone who wants to join us who will be in the area, just let us know, hit us up, all right? We'd love to see you there, okay? And then we have some other things going on after that. We just haven't put them in the calendar yet. You can always check for public events, superhumantransformation.com/calendar, and then some exclusive events that won't be put out to the public. We're going to be in Superhumans United, which is at community.superhumantransformation.com. We'd love to see you in there with a free trial. All right, so I think that is what we got going on. So let's start with talking a little bit about what's going on inside the community. So we had 3 new members sign up this past week. Love to see new people coming in there. Just like in Facebook groups, there's always like this infusion of activity and people start to, get all talkative and stuff. So we really like that. I posted my T-balls and T-burgers liver recipe this week, and I've made it like several times already, and I love it. It's a great way to sneak in some liver. So that's kind of like our recipe feature of the week. And then we had a question about organs, and what's the best way, a good way to consume liver, and what's the importance of the other organs, and just some guidelines around that. So I did a video, and that will be coming out in our newsletter here pretty soon. And the details and specifics and some really specific recommendations will be exclusive to our community. But I just want to sum this up by saying, first of all, just eating real food as a first focus is super, super powerful. And I think that if we're not relatively comfortable with that, that needs to be our main focus. Just eating real food, nurturing nutrient sufficiency and metabolic flexibility. And once we feel really good and comfortable with that, then some supplementation kind of makes some sense. And I know we all get excited about supplementation, but the first place that we usually recommend supplementing is going to be thinking about eating animals nose to tail, simply because we are an entire animal, and when we consume an entire animal, we give this entire animal what it needs to build this entire animal, right? So our main ways of focusing on that are going to be to get in the habit of consuming bone stock on a regular basis and supplementing with some collagen, and then trying to get some liver in once a week, like a quarter pound, somewhere around there, like chicken liver, beef liver, doesn't matter. Sneaking it in with a recipe like the T-balls, T-burgers. And then supplementation is great. And there's several different companies out there that are making some different kinds of products, some desiccated organs, some freeze-dried organs, different methods for it. I just love the ones that we sell because I've talked to the owners. I've been involved with biotics for so long. And so on our website, on our shop website, shop.superhumantransformation.com, we've got all those things. I recommend most people start with a multi-organ, and then liver, and then you can kind of get specific to what it is that you want to see change in yourself and things you want to enhance, or maybe some dysfunction that you have, and that you'd probably benefit from talking to somebody like me. You can schedule a call and we can kind of talk that kind of stuff out. But that was a really great question we had from one of our members, and it's going to be a really great resource once we finish it inside the community. Again, some exclusive info there that's not going to be put out to the public. And then we had a question this week from Malia about packing lunches for kids. And I really enjoyed this question because I know that a bunch of mothers are going to chime in and we'll end up making a great resource for this. So this is one of the great things I like about the potential of this community, even though it's in its infancy. Is over time we're going to have these resources that are going to be so useful for families, like so useful for people that have kids. And that's one of my visions for this, is that it kind of takes on a life of its own, and we get some really good family community type stuff going on in there. So we've already got some really, really great ideas on lunch ideas for kids and how to pack them in different containers. And so I'm really excited to see what comes out of that. And I just want to say thank you so much for our paying members. Thank you for being a part of the building process of this. And thank you to those of you who are contributing, because your contribution matters. And I think everyone wants to be involved in something that is dynamic, and there's a lot of exchange and support, and it starts with you. It can't start with me because I'm the guy that's always talking, it starts with you. And I want to say thank you so much for those of you that are paying, and those of you that are contributing. And we also appreciate people that just kind of watch and pay attention to what's happening. Contributing is not for everyone, but we recommend that you try it because you never know what's going to come out of that, So, all right. So first topic is I had a couple start this week, and, just like everybody else, they came to us with a decent understanding of nutrition. I don't have many people that come in here and they're just completely off base, eating waffles and Pop-Tarts for breakfast and Hot Pockets for lunch and TV dinners for dinner. Most people come in here and they are trying or have tried vegan, paleo, low carb, primal, ketogenic, or something along those lines, So, and every time someone starts with us, they come from this restrictive counting calories, macros, planning out meals, and all this stuff to this very liberating, freeing way of doing things. And it's so great to see the lights click, when the lights come on, when they're like, man, this is super doable. And I'm, maintaining and or getting better in a lot of different areas versus, you would think if you don't have restriction and with amounts and counting calories and number of meals and all this stuff, a lot of people think that without that they're going to start to fall apart. And it's just really liberating to see people get liberated. And so one of our big things that we talked about was reading labels, of course. We did a shopping tour, and it's really interesting that most people, when they read labels before understanding what to look for, what they're looking for is total calories, sugar content, I guess fat content to some degree. Maybe they're looking to have a certain amount of protein or something like that. And what we learn is that it's about those toxic oils and the big deal breakers like wheat. And if you can nix those things and avoid those things to the best of your abilities, that's a huge win. So, getting condiments and dressings and ketchups and mustards and mayos and all the things that we're looking for, the approved products, if you can just make sure that those things are less toxic by eliminating those deal breakers, that's a huge win for health over time. And it's just great to see the lights kind of come on about that stuff. So we had just some really, really great conversations. We also talked about asking for ingredients about things that aren't visible. So a lot of times when you go into some of these grocery stores, they have a glass counter and you've got some meats that are marinated and some sausages that are pre-made, and you don't see a list of ingredients there. And it's crucial that you ask. And I think a lot of people get uncomfortable asking for some reason. And you have to have this mindset that I'm a consumer. I deserve to know what's in this. And if you're polite about it, then it's totally cool. I think the way that you ask could have a lot to do with how uncomfortable it feels. So if you're polite and you're just, hey, I'm just curious, and this is their job. They're there to actually help inform you and serve you because you're a paying customer. So always remember that. I would always ask about ingredients for things that you can't see that are pre-seasoned or pre-flavored or something like that. Okay. All right. So transitioning on to I had another couple of clients. I had a client, her name's Madison. I think she's so amazing, like just such a great client. She left a review, actually it was this morning, and some of the things she said in there resonated with some discussions that I had with another client this week. And this was on this topic of how a lot of people come here for health coaching and they initially think, or we start with this idea that the nutrition piece is what we're focusing on. And we definitely spend a lot of time on the nutrition and maybe sometimes the sleep and some other things. But like a lot of times we dig into this mindset thing, because when you learn what to eat and the rationale behind it, it makes sense. And the way that we do things, it is very simplistic. It's very elegant. And so that what to do and how to do it isn't super, super challenging or complex. What's challenging is our emotional challenges with it, our habituations, our cravings, our urges, our addictions, excluding the food realm. Just in general, like the way that we handle challenges and things that are different, and this potential to kind of throw our hands up and walk away and try something else. And there's just so many things that come into this. And so it's interesting because me and Madison have had several conversations around purpose and goals. And I did this video that was inspired by our conversation called Letting Go of the Mystic Self. And if you haven't read or watched that or listened to it, like I would highly recommend it, because it's from the heart and I feel like it's a really, really solid piece of content. But, and this came up again, this past week, and it usually does, about like, I'm trying to figure out like, what is my purpose in life? And how does that question come up in these health coaching sessions? Well, it's because we're trying to connect with, why are we here? Like, why are we doing this for ourselves? Why are we trying to improve our health, improve our nutrition, improve our sleep? Like, what is it that we're trying to do? And it's really useful to connect with what your values are and what your vision is for yourself, for health and for life in general. And I think some of us sometimes struggle with trying to figure that out. And I think a really good point to remember is that you don't have to have it figured out. You don't have to have a plan for the rest of your life. You just want to ask the questions most days. Like, what's important to me? What do I want from this day? How do I want to show up? What's important to me in life in general? What am I moving towards? What is it that I think I want? And can I have some flexibility with that? Because I think a lot of times our goals and our quote unquote purpose sometimes isn't really ours, because it's been given to us from someone else unconsciously, unintentionally. We have expectations that we receive from everywhere. I mean, we put them on ourselves. We got social expectations, social media expectations, parents, friends, family members, religion, school, you name it. We got all these things, ideas of things that we're supposed to be happy and successful. And maybe those aren't things that really make us happy. One of the great conversations we got into this past week in discussing this whole thing is, the thing that you think is going to make you happy, is it really going to make you happy? And to really figure that out, you can ask yourself, do I know examples of this being true and not true in all its different varieties? So for instance, like if I think that I'm supposed to have kids, it's part of life. For me to be a successful human being, I need to have a good relationship, and I need to have kids, and I need to have the house and the money and all this stuff. So you can ask yourself, do you know anybody that has kids and has those things and is not happy? I'm sure most of us do. Do you know anybody who has kids and has those things that is happy? I'm sure most of us do, right? Do you know anybody? You could take that to any example, right? And you can see and prove that it's not those things that make people happy. It's not those things that are going to make us happy. Because as soon as first of all, we have to scrutinize what it is we think we want and where that came from. And then once we get to where we think it is what we want, we have to understand that our happiness is not going to ride on achieving that thing. Because once you get there, you and I both know it, then what? Right? You get some temporary satisfaction. Maybe you're happy for a little bit, and then it's gone. It's fleeting. So it's an interesting thought exercise to scrutinize what it is you think you want and to get clear on this vision for yourself, which I think is really useful to think about the kind of person you want to be versus these end states, although there may be some use for those end states too, because they do help you initiate some action and make some changes and stuff. But in general, I think it's just a useful process to scrutinize what it is you think you want and try to figure out and understand that like the achievement of these things is not going to make me happy. It's the process that I want to try to embrace and cherish. And we hear it all the time. It's very cliche. Enjoy the journey, not the destination. It's, life is about the journey. Like, we hear that and it goes in one ear and out the other, but it is the truth if you can understand it. So then how do we find happiness? How do we find purpose? Well, first of all, asking those deep questions, but then also I think it's always a great idea as a fallback to focus on yourself and your health as you're figuring out life. Because I truly believe that the more vibrant and clean and clear you become from health, the more your path starts to open up and the more you start to understand these things. One of my clients this week asked, like, so how do you get to that point to where you see things like this? And I said, by having these conversations and by going back and forth on them and by doing the daily work of noticing yourself getting caught up and sucked into and upset. And that's why meditation is so useful, right? But if you can see these things happening, see these things like a movie and have these discussions, then you get to this point at some point to where, like, you have a different perspective on things. And it doesn't mean that you're always happy and that you don't have life situations and all that. It's a different way of being, maybe. And I truly believe that health facilitates a lot of that. So, and if you're stuck somewhere, this is another thing we talked about. If you're stuck, you don't know how to, let go or get rid of or handle a situation or the conversation to have. If you're stuck, then take yourself out of it and look at yourself as if you were in a movie, and ask yourself, like, well, what advice would I give to Paul right now? Paul is the superhero of this freaking movie of life that he's in, and if I was looking at Paul as a friend or someone that I care about, like, what advice would I give to this person? How are they talking to themselves? Is that necessary? How are they thinking? Is that the way to think about things? It's like if you're watching a movie and you're the star of the show, or if you're watching a movie and pretend like it's your friend that's going through the exact same situation, what advice would you give this hero? And that this is going to be a great ending, right? It's going to be a great freaking amazing journey with ups and downs. See yourself like that, because that's exactly what this is. This life is an amazing journey of ups and downs and ins and outs and strikes and gutters, and we just want to be a part of it and see it happening, and I think it just makes it a little bit easier to make decisions sometimes. So, all right. A little bit of a tangent there, but I think that's useful stuff, man. That's what happens in our private health coaching sessions. They're really, really awesome. So we've already talked about supplements. Let me see if there's something. Most clients come, just to talk about supplements a little bit more. Most clients come in here with a bag full of supplements, and we all like supplements because to some degree we feel like it's going to do something for us, but also we hear things from wherever we get our information about how useful they might be, right? And I think it's liberating for people to simplify their supplement load, And, with all these supplements, I think a first step is always scrutinizing the ingredients and making sure they're the right versions of things. And if we don't know how to do that, then we can learn. And then we have to ask, like, what are the best things to supplement with? Well, we've kind of already talked about this idea around eating nose to tail, right? So bone stock, collagen, and organs. But we also always recommend that you start with supporting the digestive system and making sure your digestion's really strong. And then you can get into these ancillary things like, vitamin C and some D3 and K2 and probably some EPA, DHA maybe. But we've simplified our list for sure, because in the past we used to have this really long list of stuff just in cases, and now things are getting more and more simple. So, but the big takeaway from a visit with a client this week was that supplements are secondary to real food. They're not primary. Real food is primary. Nutrient sufficiency through real food, metabolic flexibility through real food, and not eating food is primary. Supplements are secondary. And then, we got off on this topic about cholesterol. And it's like, that's such a nuanced topic. Like, what to look for. I think it was because this person was taking some supplements for cholesterol. So then the question is, what are we actually supposed to look for versus, what are we told to look for? And, do these things, eating these things or not eating these things or taking these things, does that help or not help? And again, real food is primary. Cholesterol is secondary. And by the way, cholesterol works itself out if you eat real food the way we recommend. But it's not about doing anything to manipulate cholesterol. Cholesterol is secondary. Real food is primary. Real food is primary, I think, in most situations when it comes to nutrients and things like that. So All right, moving on. Had a great visit with a guy today, man. He's freaking awesome. And one of the things that came up was about measuring progress in different ways. So we go through this reflection. Usually, when clients come in, we reflect over the past few weeks and try to see how did things change in a lot of different areas, because most of us are kind of fixated on the body composition piece. And this guy is weighing himself every day, and in the beginning, I guess it's a good thing because it's. He's losing weight most days, but, there's going to be a time that he's not. And so we had this great conversation around, how do we measure progress in different ways so that we know what we're doing is working, even though this one thing that I hope to see change isn't necessarily changing. If I can see changes in other directions and other ways, that makes me feel like, okay, this is good for me and this is good for my health and good for my body. That's all I need as a motivation to move forward. And eventually, other things will continue to shift. The body prioritizes change in its own way, and we can't force anything. What we can do is, again, eat real food, focus on nutrient sufficiency and metabolic flexibility, and let the rest of itself work out. And I'm not saying that the body composition piece isn't important to us, but again, it's just we want to make sure that we're measuring progress in a lot of different ways. Okay. Now, when it comes to measuring body composition, most people, when they start to eat real food, they do not see the scale budge. Well, I don't know. Okay, I shouldn't say most. A lot of people, when they come into eating real food, their body changes dramatically. You can see it in their face and their clothes and the way their body's forming and shaping, but the scale doesn't change so much. And we truly believe that it's because as you get nutritionally sufficient, you're packing yourself with more nutrients. Your muscles are becoming more full or dense or something along those lines, right? And so I've got plenty of people that the scale didn't change much, but dramatic. You look at them and you would think they had lost a third of their body weight. And so, today we just talked about what's other ways to measure body composition changes, and don't weigh yourself every day, because the scale, it's not the end all be all. And so we talked about how you feel in general, right? But specifically with body composition, just looking at yourself in the mirror most days. If you have a healthy relationship with that, I know that's probably a very, very nuanced discussion there. But I mean, maybe just, how are you going to measure this? Looking at yourself, how your clothes fit is a huge indicator, your waist size with your clothes, your shirts, and then especially what people are saying to you. Because a lot of times we're not going to notice these changes in ourselves, but other people will, because we see ourselves every day, And again, maybe letting go of this idea that this is the most important thing. It is important to all of us, but also focusing on these other ways of measuring progress. Right? Let's see. Friday had such a great visit with and I got his permission to say his name, Mike Emrod, and I just want to make a plug for how proud I am of this guy, because he has come so far in so long, and he's been through the ups and downs and valleys and gone off and come back, and I'm really proud of him for having an attitude of, when he falls off, he, sometimes it's maybe for a long time, but he always comes back. And I think we all need to have this mentality that no matter what happens, we have to be committed to always coming back, and understand that none of us are ever going to be perfect with all this stuff all the time. We're always going to have these ebbs and flows and falling off and being disappointed with ourselves and beating ourselves up, and it's part of the process, and we get better at it for sure, and we get better at the less beating up of ourselves and things like that. But we just have to have this commitment now that going forward, no matter what happens, I am always going to be engaged. I'm going to do my best. I know that I'm going to have difficulties. I know that I'm going to fall off. I know that I'm going to have challenging times where it feels like, I'm in a funk and a hole and all this stuff. And that's why we have to work on all these other foundations to help us build these tools to get us back on. And so it was just great to see Mike at this point to where he's like, I've just really tried to simplify things. Simplicity is the key for him, and I think it should be for a lot of us. And he said with business, with his relationships, with his food, with his food, he's like, man, every day I think about my day really quick in the morning, and I try to see, okay, so what's going to happen at lunch? All right, what are my options? I got this one restaurant, boom. All right, so if I eat lunch and it has to be at this restaurant, this is what I'm getting. Just a little bit of pre-thought or a little bit of intention goes such a long way. He already makes his decision up before he goes to work. And then evening meals, their goal is just no processed food. They're not worried about amounts. They're not worried about carb amounts or any of that kind of stuff. They're just no processed food. Guy looks amazing. And I just think that simplicity of looking at the day and just thinking, what am I going to do? What am I going to do for lunch? Oh, I don't have lunch. What am I going to do if I get hungry at that time? What's near me? Like just a little bit of intention goes a long way. Trying to keep things as simple as possible. And having a commitment, he said there's a commitment there to no impulse stuff. Like I'm just telling myself before I start the day, I'm not going to allow myself to do an impulse purchase of some food or an impulse something that I didn't pre-think out just a little bit. So I really, really love that. And I think the thing that we ended on was this idea around the power of constantly tinkering with this health thing, constantly being committed to being engaged and understanding it's just part of the process. I'm going to have these ups and downs and ebbs and flows, but the whole time I'm cultivating a wisdom. Even though I feel like in my mind I'm quote unquote like a failure, I'm not doing that great. I'm cultivating something there, because every time I catch myself off and I commit to coming back and I come back and knowing that I'm going to come off again, every time I do that, I'm strengthening my ability to notice myself in my hole and notice myself off, and I'm strengthening my ability to come back to food. It's very similar to what we do in meditation. So that was just such a great visit and loved it. So I think that's the majority of what we got from this week, and hopefully that's useful for you guys. I think I want to finish with this, which is be the change that you want to see. If you have a problem with something that you're a part of, or if you have a different expectation of something that you're a part of, if you want it to be different, then be that thing that you want to be different. Be the spark that could ignite other people to do the same thing. Okay? I think that's all I got, y'all. Y'all make it a great week. Keep it real. All right. Thank you guys so much for listening.
Just remember, the purpose of this podcast is to support our SHT community and to be in your ear as a go-to resource for all things SHT.
Yeah, and if you've fallen off, if you need support, just come back and listen to some of these episodes. You can get re-inspired, re-motivated, and re-engaged. And if you're new to us, the best way you can get started with us is by connecting with us wherever it makes sense by going to SHT4life.com. That's SHT4life.com. And you'll see links to all of our social media accounts.
If you'd like to support us, the best thing you can do is take this information and be living examples to others. You can also share this with people you care about.
Yeah, and if you'd like to be a part of something amazing, you can help us empower the planet together by joining our freaking amazing community at community.superhumantransformation.com. That's all we got.
Bye.